Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Community Development Grant Small um, webinar to go through the terms of this grant. Uh, we will give everyone another minute or so to hop on, and then we will get started without too much more delay. Thanks for joining us today. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started then. If you go to the next slide, Kenny. Hi everyone, good afternoon again. My name is Patrick Liao. I'm a manager here at Guidehouse, which has been partnering together with the city and acting as a program administrator for the Community Development Grant Small Program since the spring of 2023. We're excited today to kick off the first webinar for this round of funding. This is for grants up to $250,000 with a deadline of August 15th. As through the course of the next hour or so, we'll get through a good deal more in terms of what exactly this grant entails, how exactly the Guidehouse team fits in here, what you can do to put your project in the best possible place to make sure it's successful. As a quick housekeeping note, I'll just say, please put your questions in the Q&A function down below. We will not be kind of taking live questions. Just anything that comes to mind in terms of how to make the application as strong as possible or what the terms of the grant entail, please put those into the Q&A function here. But first, I will hand it over to Hannah Jones to introduce herself and her role at the City of Chicago's Department of Planning and Development.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending our first info session of this application period. My name is Hannah Jones. I'm the program director over the community development grants. We are so excited to be launching the program again this year. We love these grants because they help small businesses get some funds to do capital improvements to their brick and mortar locations, and they are not tied to any specific boundary, just Chicago-based businesses that have a location in the city. So really wonderful program. And I will turn it over to my colleague, Madison Ward, to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. As Hannah mentioned, my name is Madison Ward, and I am the program manager overseeing the community development grants with Hannah. And I'm very excited to be here and look forward to all of your applications.
Yeah, we don't even have your voucher.
And I'll pass it on to one of our Guidehouse counterparts.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Madison. We can go ahead then, if you'd like to move forward, Kenny. So just as a brief overview of what exactly this entails, CDG small grants are available for up to $250,000. The next slide will get a little bit more detail as to the division over what the city would cover if you were a successful applicant versus what you would cover on your side as the business owner, the project lead. But suffice it to say, at this juncture, we will cover up to 75% of eligible expenses up to a cap of $250,000. At the outset, we do want to stress that this is a reimbursement-based grant. So you will be expected, and as part of the contract, if you are selected to be part of this program, expenses must be paid upfront by you as a business owner. We will then reimburse you those funds, assuming you submitted all the proper documentation, all the invoices and receipts, kind of aligned with what's stated in your contract. And then at that point, we will reimburse you to make sure that you are properly paid out for the work that's been done here. Selected projects must be completed within 2 years of the orientation. To do a little bit of level setting, the deadline for this is in August. We expect selection to happen at some point in the fall and into the winter, and then orientation to officially, start with the process of this program. That will happen within. That will happen hopefully, at some point within the winter fall timeframe. You must complete all your projects with construction totally done, projects paid out within 2 years of that orientation. And per the terms of your contract, you must maintain your business for an additional 3 years. Last thing I just do want to say at the very top here, you're not able to complete any work prior to the orientation. And so if you're planning on doing construction right away, you're planning on construction that happens at some point, in June 2025, this will likely not be a good fit for you. And we are looking for projects that, will have construction that, you're still in the pre-planning phase, you're still figuring out what exactly it looks like. And that construction must happen after the orientation occurs for you to be successfully reimbursed according to the terms of this grant. On the next slide here, whatever you are able to be reimbursed against, that grant award is based on specific bids you get from general contractors, from an architect, engineering bids. And once again, all of these grants are going to be reimbursement based. And so as a whole, whatever your project cost ends up being, we will cover up to 75% and up to $250,000. And so if you have, say, a $750,000 project, you're doing some major renovations, maybe you are moving into a space that wasn't outfitted to be a restaurant and you want to make it a restaurant, and it's a really big project, no matter what the, if it's a $750,000 project, we will reimburse you up to 75% of that, up to $250,000. And so you will be expecting at that point to, be reimbursed at $250,000 max. And then the remainder of the $500,000 or so in project costs, again, assuming everything's eligible, those will have to be borne by you. This is a lot of details. We'll make sure that you are fully acquainted with the terms of this project if you get selected. But suffice to say, we do want to look out for accurate, comprehensive bids at this application at this application juncture. If you have bids in hand, that would be fantastic. And once again, regardless of the total project cost, the maximum award is $250,000. I also do want to mention up front that strong applicants are ones that are able to finance up to 50% of the total project cost. And so again, if you are, with a $750,000 hypothetical, we do want to make sure that you are able to, you have $275,000 in funds to kind of access. And so that can be in the form of loans, that can be in the form of savings, that can be in the form of, previous fundraising efforts that you've already embarked upon for your business. We do want to make sure that, you're able, because it's a reimbursement-based grant, we've kind of learned through experience that some applicants run out of cash and have to change the terms of the contract. We will not be able to do that. And so, making sure that you have enough liquidity will make sure that you are able to kind of complete this construction and fulfill the terms of the grant and the money that the city will be granting to you. Go to the next slide. So with all of that kind of finance details out of the way, I do want to talk a little bit more about who the city is targeting to, as eligible grantees under the terms of this grant. So we are looking for business owners, entrepreneurs, property owners, nonprofit organizations, community developers, just the small business owners located in the city of Chicago. As Hannah mentioned earlier, we don't have any neighborhood preferences specifically carved out for specific corridors or specific neighborhoods. You are eligible to apply for this grant if you're located in the city of Chicago. We are looking for commercial mixed use, and if it's a light manufacturing project, we can have a little bit more of a conversation about it, about what exactly it would look like for us to fund your work. But in general, we're looking for commercial transformations here. We do allow for some mixed use, end use projects, but the focus isn't going to be on residential retrofitting or HVAC replacement that primarily targets the residential units in the building. Like we are looking, the commercial kind of aspect of it has to be front and center, and that's the real focus of this grant here. And again, it's a little asterisk, land acquisition that's eligible. It should not be, it should not constitute the lion's share of this project. If you are looking for this grant to purchase a plot of land for, and that's the kind of the primary end use of this of your project, this isn't a good fit for you as well. We are able to fund new construction on vacant sites scattered around the city of Chicago. So if you have a building that has fallen vacant, and there's new construction and you'd like something else to go in that place, that would be possible as well. And vanilla box projects where if you're a developer, you're trying to figure out, you don't have a tenant in mind just yet, but you want to overhaul the space that you currently have to make it amenable and possible for a good high quality tenant to move in. That's going to be possible as well. We do expect, though, in that case, you will not be able to be fully reimbursed until you actually have a tenant identified. And feel free to kind of ask a question there if you are a vanilla box developer in this position here. On the next slide, I'll go into what exactly are the expenses that we're looking to fund. So I think overall, it's construction work is at the heart of this. And so if you have major exterior and interior renovations you want to do, that's the bread and butter of what exactly this grant program will fund. And so architectural and design costs, if you need demolition of aspects of a current space, you need a new roof, you need a new facade because that's fallen into disrepair, masonry to replace brickwork, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, ADA improvements, all of those would be excellent fits for this program. We also do want to note, though, that the contractors you select to perform this work will need to have a City of Chicago license and an active insurance policy. And so, yeah, they need to be certified to be able to work in the City of Chicago here. And next. Owners representatives. These are professionals dedicated to advocating for a project owner's interest. This is really more for your attention, and you're not expected to have an owner's rep, but these are have been resources that have been useful to previous awardees here. If you are a fantastic baker and you like to open up your bakery, that it doesn't naturally follow that if you're a good baker, you're going to be great at seeing through a construction project from infancy till you actually moved in and you open up your bakery. And so yeah, these are eligible costs. You're able to kind of hire an owner's rep to help you manage this grant, engage key stakeholders, and so on. But I do want to stress this is not at all a requirement for this project. Okay, I think we can go ahead to the application process in that case, and I'll hand it over to my colleague, Alex.
Perfect. Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon, everyone. So from here, we'll go over some recommendations to ensure that you produce the strongest possible application and are aware of what the city is looking out for when reviewing your application. So beginning with readiness and feasibility, strong applicants will have a fully realized project plan, which will include an itemized budget or bid from a general contractor licensed in the city, as well as design documents, 3D renderings, or drawings from a state licensed architect. Demonstrated proof of financing for at least 50% of your project's total costs or a plan to secure this financing. So this could include personal or business bank statements, documentation that outlines approval for a line of credit or a loan. Additionally, a detailed business plan, which has up-to-date profit and loss statements, really showing us how this grant factors into your existing business and future plans. And then lastly, audited tax documents, which could include a federal income tax return, or for nonprofits, Form 990. Next slide, please. For site control, all projects will need to include proof of site control, which could include a lease executed from your business's legal entity for multiple years with the option to renew. This could be a deed or real estate contract that accurately shows your business entity as having ownership of the project site, or a letter of intent for the location signed by the intended leaser and leasee, demonstrating the intention of both parties to conduct the project at the site. Just a note here, if the lease or deed is not in the name of your business's legal entity, we will need to see a lease addendum or signed letter on organizational letterhead authorizing the construction and overall project under this grant from the party that owns the project site. Next slide. So from here, we will show you in a second a project financing table where you'll be asked on the application to include details on the financing you have or will need to secure to demonstrate the feasibility of your project. As a reminder, this is a reimbursement-based grant where you will need to finance your project upfront, and you'll then be reimbursed for eligible expenses outlined in your grant contract. You will be asked to provide evidence that you have at least 50% of the total project cost on hand to finance the project. And so remember that 50% is the total project cost, not the grant award, as Patrick walked through. For example, if your total project cost is $1 million and your grant award is $250,000, we will need to see proof that you have 50% of that $1 million total project cost. And so the next slide here will include examples of what constitutes acceptable and unacceptable evidence of these funds. So if you look to the top left here, we can see what a strong, acceptable example of proof of financing would be. We have the business and personal checking or savings statements with a noted bank statement attached, as well as a loan from a financial institution with that loan commitment letter attached. You have these funds secured, which goes a long way to demonstrating your project readiness and feasibility. In general, we want to make sure that all of your proof of financing adds up to 50%. So as long as your funding sources add up to 50% of your total project cost, that is satisfactory here. Looking to the bottom right, we can see unacceptable examples, which would include funds that are anticipated without evidence, saying you have certain funding without evidence, and using and listing the community development grant small itself as being a source of financing. Next slide, please. And so your total grant award up to $250,000 will be determined by the eligible itemized expenses you provide in your application. So shortly, we will look at a sample budget with line item expenses indicating the costs, which will be supported by a bid from a general contractor. And so just as a reminder, it is important to provide as close to accurate cost estimates in your application as possible, because these estimates will be factored into your total grant award if you are selected as a CDG finalist. Your grant award will be based on these costs you include, so working with a general contractor to provide accurate cost estimates rather than guessing will ensure that your grant award meets the needs of your project costs. For example, if you make a guess that your masonry costs are $30,000, but they actually cost $60,000, we cannot kind of go back and revise your grant award upward. If you are selected for the CDG program, you will need to provide a comparable bid for each eligible expense to ensure you're receiving the best possible price for each item in your scope of work. And lastly here, we do encourage you to add a contingency line item for up to 10% of your eligible project construction costs up to that $250,000 grant award cap. The contingency here serves as flexibility and a cushion in case costs from other eligible line items increase and you need additional capital to cover for any cost past what you'd originally planned on spending. So for example, if your masonry costs $5,000 more than you expected, you can use that approved contingency line item to cover that extra $5,000 you didn't expect. Next slide. And so here's an example of the project budget you'll be asked to fill out in your application. And so a reminder, strong budgets will be supported by a bid from a city licensed general contractor, have these line items broken out in detail with their respective costs, and not include ineligible items like the furniture and equipment line noted here in yellow. Please keep in mind, again, that we base your grant award off of the estimates you provide in this table. So estimates backed by a contractor, as close to accurate as possible, will benefit you in the long run. Next slide, please. And so if you've already begun working with an architect, general contractor, please provide copies in your application of your drawings, 3D renderings, storefront elevations, construction bids, or signed contracts that you have showing the scope of work that you and your project team have agreed on. Next slide here. And then just overall, there are 4 main components to consider as you prepare to submit your application for the August 15th round of CDG funding. So first, with readiness, are you ready for this project? That would include owning or having approved access to the project site, a detailed budget and construction timeline, as well as architect or general contractor documents outlining the project's scope of work. Secondly, projects are more competitive when it is clear the project can be financed and is feasible. As a reminder, this is a reimbursement-based grant, and so you'll have to pay project costs upfront, demonstrating project financing being secured, an issued permit, business plans, and financial statements demonstrating positive cash flow or general financial stability really do make your project that much more competitive. Third, in community impact, how does your project impact the community, the neighborhood, ward, area of the city that your project is based in? Are there community members or elected officials in support of your project? Does your project create jobs in the community, both full and part-time, especially those catering to Chicago youth? A clear plan for community outreach and engagement and having local support make you a more competitive applicant and are vital to ensuring long-term growth and operation of your business. And so please, we encourage you to conduct outreach to your alderperson and local community groups if you've not done so already. And then lastly, during the due diligence phase, the city will review any outstanding city debt that you, your board members, or your organization owe the city. Please ensure you're up to date with your property taxes at your project site and make sure that your project site is zoned for your intended construction. We will also confirm your business is in good standing with the state of Illinois. These are typically annual filings, so if you know that your filing is expiring soon, please make sure you renew before you apply, as we do check during our review process. In our review process, we do take a holistic look at your application, working closely with the Department of Buildings and the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection to review your organization, project feasibility, and project site to determine really the strongest applicants to move forward with. From here, I'll pass it back to the Chicago Recovery Plan Director, Hannah Jones, for some closing remarks.
Sorry, guys. Sometimes it takes a while to find that mute button. So we really appreciate you guys for attending. We're going to do a Q&A session. I believe on one of the links, we have the link to our community development grant landing page. Yes, there it is. Perfect. Just as a reminder, all of our tiers of our community development grant are open. So this presentation is specifically on small for grants up to $250,000. However, medium and large grants are being accepted as well. You can find information for all those grant tiers on the Chicago.gov/CDG website. And if you have any questions, you can email dpdgrants@cityofchicago.org. And we are happy to either answer the question directly or get you a contact with the person who can answer it.
Hannah, if you'd like, we can go through some of the questions that we have flagged for live answering. And also, please keep in mind that we've already answered some of the questions. You can see that in the Answered tab.
Kenny, do you want to read off the question, and then Madison and I can tag answering them?
Absolutely. First one is, if projects begin before the orientation but will continue past the orientation, is that still an eligible project?
So for any work that's done before the orientation would not be considered eligible, but for instance, say if you are, you know, you replace the roof already, but you still have all the interior construction to do, the interior construction would be eligible.
Thank you. There's a question from Carmen here. What if the location is outside of Chicago, like DuPage? I can take this real quick. You must be located within Chicago city limits in order to be eligible for the CDGS program. Next one here. Do construction plans need to be for 2026?
Let's see. Yes, you would need to essentially have your project plan for 2026. So the clock starts once you attend the orientation, and you have 2 years to complete the project. That includes about 6 months for the pre-contract phase and the contracting phase.
Next question here. Can you clarify your statement that preference is given to residential purposes? What about commercial property owners looking to do major capital renovations?
So preference is not given to residential purposes. Residential is not eligible. This grant is just for commercial properties with people who are looking to do the capital renovations for their commercial business.
Yeah, to clarify a little bit, so I mentioned residential at the very top of the presentation. If you are a mixed use development, like, you know, don't take yourself out of the running, but the residential portion of your project has to be, like, you know, very, very small. Like the focus here has to be on the commercial side of things. So yeah, very much not the case that preference is given to residential projects here. I just wanted to clear that up.
Great, thank you guys. Next question here from Paul. Does this support new construction not affiliated with improvements?
So new construction is eligible, yes.
Question here, probably best for the Guidehouse team. Can we review application documents with someone to ensure 100% of requirements are met before submission is due?
If you have a specific aspect of your application that, you know, you have some questions about whether you filled it out correctly, we can help you with that. We have traditionally not sat down with someone to look through the application from beginning to end, and that's mainly because we're also the ones helping to review the applications, and so we don't necessarily want to color that, you know, application review process that way. But if there's any part of the application that isn't clear, or that you need a little bit of help with, you know, please send an email to the inbox listed on here, and we'd be happy to get back to you and you know, answer any questions you might have that way.
So just to clarify, just to make that a little bit clearer, Patrick, we can answer factual questions on the application. Like, is this you know, is a bank document acceptable for proof of financing secured, such as that, but we will not be giving opinions on what you're submitting beforehand. So anything that would be opinion based, like, is this a good letter of support, or like, should I include, you know, like, we can't give any sort of opinion based advice on the application, just factual answer factual questions.
And for those folks that do need to email in with questions, the dpdgrants@cityofchicago.org email address that's currently listed on the slide is the best way to get in touch with our team. Next question here. If I own a vacant building and currently leasing my restaurant in a different location, am I eligible to apply for this grant to do the build out in the vacant building if I'm eventually planning to move my restaurant there?
Yes, just before, so if you are planning on moving your restaurant there, you know, we will still need to see site control for the vacant building. And in order to receive the full grant amount, you will have to be licensed in the space before you receive it. And Kenny, this is a quick one. Is pavement, asphalt, construction an eligible expense? It was not mentioned in the budget spreadsheet. So the budget spreadsheet is not a comprehensive list of anything that might be part of your project. That's why we kind of include an other expenses line item, because, you know, we might miss some things. But a good rule of thumb for what is eligible for the program is just if it is a permanent fixture in the space or permanent improvement made to the space, and in order to remove it, it would have to take a team of, you know, 5 people, 2 days, and then you risk destroying whatever it is to get it out of there. It's probably an eligible expense, something that you can't take with you if you move.
Thank you, Hannah. A number of folks so far have asked how to access the recording of the webinar, as well as accessing the slide deck. The Chicago.gov/CDG link on the current slide is where we will include a hyperlink to the presentation recording, as well as the slide deck and corresponding materials. That webpage also contains a lot of helpful information like frequently asked questions, etc., that we do recommend you take a look at. So for anybody wondering where the presentation will be, it's going to be available on that link. Next one here from Audrey. Can we do capital stack for our project?
I'm not particularly clear on what exactly that is alluding to.
It might mean just like whether they're able to take a variety of different grants and loans to actually complete the project here.
Yes, we accept loans, lines of credit, whatever financing mechanism that you want to put in place in order to finance your project.
Next question here, and definitely one that we get very often. How many grants are available in this funding round, or do you happen to know what the total grant budget is for the CDGS program this round?
So the budget varies. So we don't like to say that we are going to be taking X number of grants, because frankly, if we don't receive enough applications that we think, you know, would be viable projects, we will award less than what is budgeted. So I always say just focus on your application. Don't be trying to think about like the competitiveness of it. Just focus on your project, complete all the questions, answer them thoroughly, upload all the documents, and you should have a good shot.
This one's from Masha. Can landscaping projects be eligible as part of the project budget?
Yes, landscaping is eligible generally for items that are considered like more long-term. So, you know, trees, grass, things that are considered sort of like the more permanent items. We wouldn't fund like potted plants that could be taken with, but things that, again, you can't take the tree with you, so we would fund a tree.
Next question here, and something I can speak to a little bit as well. If I apply for a certain amount of funding, is it possible the grant will be awarded for a lesser amount than I asked for? Yes, it is possible. One common way that this happens is, you know, our team will actually go through the project budget line by line and make eligibility determinations. So if there's something that you include in your project budget and we determine that, you know, it's not an eligible expense, a really common example of that would be certain FFE items, we call them, furniture, fixtures, equipment, non-permanent items that you might have listed, generally cannot be included. So it's very possible that your amount will be less than that. We'll do a grant calculation and kind of make the best determination that we can. But yes, generally speaking, it is possible for your grant award to be less than you asked for similar situations.
Can I just make clear though? So when you finish, when you complete the application, you're filling it out, you're not, you know, at the end saying like, because of all of this, I'm applying for $250,000 in grant funding out of a $400,000 project. Like, we base everything on, you know, we base what the grant award is entirely on the bids that you submit along with it, the kind of estimated prices that you submit along, you know, with the application. And so you're not applying for a specific dollar amount. The dollar amount that you receive will just flow from, you know, those estimates and ideally those bids from a GC that you submit together with the application.
Thank you, Patrick. Next question here. Can you apply for the small and medium/large grants to cover various parts of a project?
So you cannot, you have to try and fit the grant tier that covers your project costs and apply for that. We do not allow stacking of the grants.
Next question here from Victoria. How can you be licensed in the space if it is not built out?
So licensing is part of the last disbursement. So our grant is dispersed in 4 different phases based on where you are in your project. So permitting is one, and rough inspections, final inspections, and then licensing. So we do not require a business license up front because we understand that some licenses require the build out to be complete in order to be properly licensed. So that is the requirement of the final disbursement of the grant phase.
Awesome. Thank you, Hannah. Similar question on licensing. It sounds like, and just trying to summarize this question, by licensing, are you specifically referring to a City of Chicago license? And additionally, does the LLC who owns the building apply, or should the actual tenant business itself apply in the event that you're leasing a space?
So so you need a City of Chicago license if you are the business that is moving into the space, understanding that some licenses are managed through the state. Oh, sorry, Kenny, the question went away. But if you are just, you just own the building and you're trying to do sort of vanilla, a vanilla box, you will be required to lease the space before you receive your final grant amount.
Awesome. Thank you. This next question from Stephen is pretty similar to a previous question. Is it permissible to pursue both small and medium-sized grants concurrently for the same property? You can submit multiple applications, but please note there's a restriction on how many DPD grants you're able to receive at a given time. So you would have to choose theoretically if you were selected for both. Looks like Madison's answering the next question, so I'll skip down. As a nonprofit, we are in need of doing significant improvements to our office space for all staff and building a computer lab for free training to the community. Would this be approved? I'm struggling with the revenue generating requirement in particular.
So generally with revenue, we generally do not accept applications for entities that are reliant on public funding. We say you're a nonprofit, but you also like own the property that you're on, and maybe there's a coffee shop that you are building out in order to supplement. We would pay for the renovation of the coffee shop, but renovations for like the office portion of the social services or nonprofit operation would not be covered.
Great, thank you. This question from Marilyn here sounds like they are planning to open a trucking company space. If the question is just like, is that an eligible business? Hannah, any thoughts?
So yeah, that sounds a trucking company. We'd have to take a look at it, but on the surface, it sounds eligible, similar to a machine shop. So light manufacturing is eligible. It sort of depends on what type of machining is happening in the shop, Nicole. So that's if you would like to email DPD grants with just more details, we can provide clarity there. And I see that Janita has a question around any restriction for those applicants that have already received city grant funding, such as TIF or SPIF. So generally, if you're applying for the same property, the same location, same business, if you are to, and you have received another small business grant from our bureau, you are eligible to apply for 3 years from when that grant is closed. So if you close out your grant 2024, you can apply again in 2027.
Looks like Alex is answering that question. Next one here. I own the property and I'm applying to build out to make the property ready to lease. Can the lessee also apply for the grant for the purposes of their own build out?
So generally, no. So those we generally don't go by just the straight property address. However, if you paid for the build out of the space in order to make it move-in ready, your leasee would not be able to apply to continue that build out. It would be considered ineligible at that point. However, if you have a space with multiple, multiple spaces, and you only did build out in one of them, say maybe maybe you have like a tiny strip mall somewhere and you only applied to make one space build out ready, and there's a lessee of like another location a couple doors down, that lessee could apply for their build out of their space.
Great, thanks, Hannah. Looks like a few folks are already answering some of the other questions. I can answer this next one here. How long does fund disbursement take? This is a great question. Generally, there's a few considerations here. In terms of when you actually submit your first disbursement request, the most variable factor I would say actually is the event that you need to revise any documents. If you are selected as a finalist or awardee, we'll sort of teach you how to actually go about submitting disbursement documentation. We'll tell you exactly what information you need to be submitting. Generally speaking, though, if you do take a while to complete the revisions that are requested, that can, lengthen the review timeline. In terms of, what the Guidehouse and DPD teams can control, generally it takes about 5 business days for both the initial and the secondary review individually to be conducted. Those are done by Guidehouse and DPD respectively. And then generally, the Department of Finance can take anywhere from, between 5 business days all the way up to, 14 or 15 business days to actually send those funds to your bank account. So generally speaking, it can take, between 20-ish business days plus, assuming that there are not any revisions that need to be requested. But keep in mind that timeline is variable. We generally recommend that folks request their funds as soon as they can and really be prompt with completing their revisions because the disbursement timeline can vary a lot. And once the time actually comes and we're actually working with you on your disbursement, we can give you more accurate estimates so that you can plan accordingly. Next here, would this grant impact application for an SSA grant?
So I'm assuming that is referring to a facade improvement program that an SSA might manage. Generally, we don't see a lot of overlap between those grants. So Janet, please shoot DPD grants at cityofchicago.org a follow-up question to that, and we can do some more fact finding on that one. It's just something that really hasn't ever come up, but I imagine that it would impact your SSA grant if you were doing the facade rebate program. And I'm going to answer Kaya's question here. Can this be used for a home where the basement is used as a business? So no home-based businesses. If you are a zoned residential, if it's a home-based business, the home-based businesses are not eligible.
How about Ebony's question here, Hannah? If I'm starting a mobile business that will be scaled to a brick and mortar, am I eligible if I can show the entire plan?
So Ebony, if you are planning on scaling to a brick and mortar business, we have these grants available on sort of a consistent basis now. So I would just wait until you were ready to action, the brick and mortar plan, because that will make your application more competitive, because we are looking for folks who are project ready for these projects.
Great. Let me just clear out some of the questions we just answered. Okay, this question's from Lay. We're also looking to acquire a vacant property. Will any of the grants cover acquisition / is there a cap on acquisition costs? I can actually go back to this slide as well. So land acquisition, as it does say on the slide, is an eligible part of a larger commercial project, but just please note that it cannot exceed 25% of the total grant amount. So let's say hypothetically your grant award is for $250,000. The maximum you'd be able to receive for a land acquisition cost is $62,500. And we can do that math for you. So, don't worry too much about it. Just, include the cost in your application, but just please note that that's, something that will factor into the final calculation of your grant award.
And I'll answer Luther's question. So when we talk about grant stacking, we're referring to City of Chicago grants. If you have an SBA grant that you are using with this project, that's totally fine. We don't want to be essentially having the same person or the same project taking advantage of all the funds, right? So that's why we just say no no grant stacking. It also gets really complicated and frustrating for all parties involved with trying to, just sort of go through that whole process if it's grant stacking. So that's why we've just put an eligibility on stacking grants with the City of Chicago grants. So any other grants, through other sources, totally fine. It's just our specific grants and our Small Business Development Bureau, such as SPIF grants, NOF grants, that we do not allow stacking. Okay, and I don't see any more questions. Again, if you do have a question that comes to you later, please email dpdgrants@cityofchicago.org. We are very good about addressing questions as soon as possible. And we will be posting this webinar on the CDG website, the Chicago.gov/CDG. So you will be able to go back and review the presentation. Yes, please always email us. We're happy to answer any questions. Okay. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.